Church ousted our worship leader for speaking against Christian nationalism, and now the band plans a bold walkout protest. My church's youth group has this youth band that always leads worship during our weekly gatherings. Sometimes, the church asks them to do Sunday morning worship as well, mostly to spotlight the youth band when the usual worship team wants a break. I'm not actually in the band myself, but I'm often the one behind the lyric PowerPoint, sometimes with another girl who helps, too, just to keep everything on beat, except on Sundays when the band plays, then we're usually off the hook. The lead singer of the youth band is Emma. She's 20, daughter of a youth assistant, and she helps out, too. That's important for what happened recently. This all really kicked off the last Sunday in June 30th, when the youth band was at the front, leading worship on Sunday morning. I didn't expect anything wild, but then, between two of the songs, Emma took the mic and said something that honestly took me by surprise. She said she felt led, like truly moved, to say that Christian nationalism, forcing people to believe or act a certain way, had nothing to do with God. She went on, talking about how God gave us free will, Christianity's entire basis, and that a lot of Christians forget about that. I remember her saying, there would be no short and narrow path if people were forced to walk it. Then she called out Project 2025, said it was advertised as Christian but resembled nothing of God, and that God never forced anyone to believe in him. It was brief, no one interrupted her or anything, but it landed hard. After that, they played a few more songs. When the pastor wrapped up the sermon, they closed the worship, and the service was over like always. But the following Friday, when we all showed up for youth group, Emma and her mom just weren't there. It's weird when people who are there every single week just vanish. We didn't really get it at first until the youth pastor let us know Emma and her mom weren't going to be helping anymore. I remember him throwing out something about using this as a chance for others to be lead singers because Emma had left the church altogether. Later, we found out more through the band, the grapevine, always faster than the grown-ups. Turns out Emma had told the band she was banned. Not just her, but her parents left the church with her. So, really, the band already knew before the rest of us were officially told. Friday after the announcement, I ended up in this private conversation with the band and the other girl who does PowerPoint with me. No one else from youth was there, and it felt like a real us against the world moment. The band is furious about how things went down for Emma. They care about her a lot, and they want to do something meaningful about it. The biggest idea floating around is honestly wild. They want to walk out the next time the band is scheduled to play on a Sunday. The plan would be to sing the intro song that starts the service, then, when it's time to transition into worship, they'll speak out in support of Emma and walk off together in front of the whole congregation. Nobody's told a single soul outside the band group, too risky in case someone snitches. The question that's eating at all of us is what happens after. Are our parents going to go ballistic? Will we get grounded, lose help with college tuition or other stuff? The band's really weighing if this is worth it. There's probably a few weeks still before the band leads another Sunday. The church hasn't picked a new lead singer yet. But tension is high. One last thing, I noticed the church uploaded the sermon from that Sunday to their YouTube channel like they always do. But conveniently left out the whole worship set with Emma. Usually, they post the full service, worship and all. Not this time. Right now, everyone's worries are split. A lot of concerns swirl around possible tuition punishments from parents helping with college, but everyone also feels pretty strongly about standing up for Emma. Even though I'm not in the band, just help with lyrics sometimes, I want to do something for Emma, too. Honestly, I'm just hoping to find a way for us to get advice as young adults, something to consider that our parents would never tell us, and for once, have an adult back us up about doing the right thing. Maybe there's a pro or con we haven't thought of, or a middle ground we're missing. All I know right now is that it feels like we're standing on the edge of something way bigger than just a worship set. Update 1. The band is moving forward with the walkout plan, keeping everything strictly within the band itself so no other kids accidentally leak our intentions to their parents, who might tip off the church leaders. Including more people would have been powerful, but the risk of the church hearing about it was too great, and we can't afford any leaks. We've locked in a date, August 4th. That's when the youth band will be leading worship for the adults again. The next time we'll be front and center. Our youth pastor, trying to keep things normal, has appointed a singer from the group who'll rotate with other future vocalists on Sundays in the coming weeks. Here's how we hope things will unfold. The band will play the opening song, the one that signals the start of the service and cues everyone in the foyer to trickle inside. After the opener, once someone gives the welcome and leads us in prayer, our lead singer will deliver the speech we've carefully prepared before the band collectively walks off stage. I'll be joining them from the pews, along with some relatives and friends. One of my relatives has even considered bringing along more people she knows, which would definitely amplify the impact. Seeing adults get up and leave too might give the church pause. One of our relatives is going to record the entire thing, just in case the fallout is worse than expected and parents react poorly. Any advice is more than welcome right now, and I'll absolutely share it with the band. Most of us, apart from 2 seniors, aren't old enough to even vote yet, but this is our shot at standing up for what's right, especially as Christian nationalism keeps trying to entangle itself with Christianity, in my opinion turning our faith into a laughingstock for outsiders. None of us realistically expect this walkout to suddenly change the church, but it's our line in the sand, the statement we have to make. When I look back later, I don't want to regret staying silent, not when faced with it so directly. Someone told me I needed to ask myself if I could live with myself if I did nothing. My answer, and the rest of the band's, has always been no. I've realized I need to clarify something about Emma. She didn't just speak out one day at random. She's been vocal for a while about the pastor's habit of working politics into his sermons. I've seen plenty of this too. Recently, I got a few messages from people, some supportive, some the complete opposite. Some, who made sure to point out they were Christians, slammed Emma, saying she was wrong to hijack the service with her words and that she should have gone to the pastor privately, calling her immature. When I shared this with the band, I reminded them that Emma did actually confront a leader about the pastor's political sermons before, but nothing changed. The politics just kept coming from the pulpit. Some people criticized us, saying the walkout wasn't godly, that it was a publicity stunt. Church is supposed to be about God, not protests. We've been called immature, and worse. But to me, there are two things that matter. First, who else but the people inside a church are meant to call out the misuse of the pulpit? Waiting endlessly for God to change the pastor's heart hasn't worked. He's been doing this for years. Second, the Bible gives direct guidance on calling out improper behavior. See Matthew 18:15-17. Emma already tried the one-on-one conversation with a leader. The band took our concerns about Emma getting banned to the youth pastor, who just dismissed us and said Emma was out of line. As for tell it to the church, maybe the method is up for debate, but the point is we tried. Emma and the band spoke to multiple leaders, including an elder, and still, the same political rants continued Sunday after Sunday. What the pastor's been doing is anything but subtle. I've heard him reference Trump repeatedly, especially after the 2020 election, making it clear how unhappy he was with the result. He's cheered for the overturning of Roe v. Wade, raged against Pride Month, and even gone so far as to compare Trump's legal troubles to Jesus' persecution before the crucifixion. These are things that should have no business coming from the pulpit, yet they've happened for years. Someone once shared a talk by Pastor Lauren Livingston, drawing a clear line between politics and faith, and I couldn't have agreed more with his stance. Politics and faith shouldn't be tangled together, and our church needs to be held to that standard, even if it's just our small band doing it. I plan to talk with my parents before the 4th and share the full write-up the band's working on soon. This walkout is the band's collective choice. I want that to be clear. I'm not in the band myself, I just handle the PowerPoint lyrics during youth services, and I'm not in their group chat with Emma. There's a lot for everyone to lose. Some band members are even facing real threats, like parents possibly withdrawing college tuition help if they go through with this. No matter what they decide, I'll support them, because I get it, they have to think about their future too. This isn't easy for any of us, but it's the right thing to do. Update 2. Since my last update, a lot happened, especially around 8/4, which changed everything for me and the people I watched the most closely in our church's youth group. After everything that went down previously, the band ended up deciding not to go through with the walkout, and honestly, Emma was a huge reason for that decision. Emma spoke to the band a few days before 8/4. One of the younger bandmates, a 15-year-old girl, confided in her, telling her about her fears of physical abuse from her parents if any sort of public protest blew back on her. Emma, being who she is, brought this up with everyone else in the band. She also talked about the worries some of the older members had about losing their parents' support for college tuition if they took this stand. Unlike most of the band, Emma held a full-time job and was basically supporting herself at this point, but the rest of the group? Many were still tied tightly to their parents and would be for a while longer. She told them, essentially, to trust their instincts. If they had any fear about facing consequences at home, they should protect themselves first, like the 15-year-old was thinking. One of the seniors spoke up, sharing quietly that his parents had threatened his college funds over smaller things, so he took her words to heart. I wasn't actually there when Emma talked with the band. I'm not a band member, I just do the PowerPoint lyrics for youth group and get told what to play right before each meeting. But after Emma's talk, I heard everything secondhand when the band told me and the other PowerPoint volunteer. When it came to 8/4, the band didn't play. Instead, the whole group collectively, and privately, resigned to the youth pastor on the Friday before. They didn't perform on August 4th, and ahead of that, the bandmates let their parents know they were stepping down. A few made it clear that their parents never forced them into youth band in the first place, it was volunteer all the way. But that didn't mean they weren't still determined to say something about how Emma had been treated by the church leadership. They just wanted to do it in a way that wouldn't embarrass their families in front of the whole congregation or risk losing privileges at home. So, rather than a walkout, they decided to write out a statement about Emma and gave it to her so she could post it with her own explanation of why she was banned from church. On August 4th, Emma put out her side of the story online, tagging the church directly and including the band's full account of why they all resigned. Some of the other bandmates reposted it. Emma believed, maybe hoped, that this route would avoid making things harder for the band than they already were. Maybe not as many people saw it, but the rumor mill works quickly in places like ours. Some of the band members told their parents that they wouldn't be coming back to this specific church. There were some heated discussions at home, but probably nothing compared to the blowout that might have come from a big public protest in front of the congregation. The 15-year-old girl did show up to church on August 4th, but the older members sat it out. They all came back the next Sunday, But youth group? I haven't been since right before 8/4, and neither have any of them. Two wild things happened that I didn't expect. Out of nowhere, I got a DM from someone claiming to be with a Christian news outlet. I'd never even heard of their newsletter, but they wanted permission to anonymously share the band's story. No names, no church details. The band said they'd pray on it before deciding. Even crazier, a pastor from another church reached out with a DM, too. He said the story encouraged him, that pastors should hold each other accountable. He even asked for the name of our church so he could reach out to mine, pastor to pastor. Emma and the band are still praying and debating what to do there. They're making sure he's really who he says he is and thinking about possible fallout. I told him I'd get back to him if they decided to go ahead. Meanwhile, Emma let us know her parents haven't spoken much to her since she made her statement. People seem to think they left the church to support Emma after her ban, but in reality, Emma's parents were also banned. They felt blindsided and caught some flack themselves because of what Emma did. Still, Emma stands by every word, even if things at home are tense. As for me, everything about this saga has been the last straw. It's not just this church. It's the way parents in our community, and even mine, seem to care so much about appearances and devotion to church that they overlook their kids' basic needs and wants. I don't mean anything rebellious or wild, just normal things. Emma put it better than I ever could in her statement. She said God gave everyone free will, yet I'd listened to the 15-year-old vent about being threatened with abuse for not wanting to go to church, which is the opposite of what God ever wanted for anyone. God never forced people to believe, but I've seen parents yank privileges away until their kids fall in line with their version of God and church. I barely have any friends. I'm not even in the band's group chat. Everything I know secondhand. Most of them hang out together, but I only have one friend at church, largely because I've been homeschooled all my life. My parents think public school's too secular. I can't join official sports or any high school teams, just whatever pickup ball happens on the church field with our homeschool group. I wish my parents would have put me in school just once, but they say they don't trust my faith enough for me to handle it, like I'm some fragile kid who needs training wheels even though I'm already 17. I need a break from church, desperately. I know not all churches are like this, but mine just feels wrong on every level. I've decided I'm not a Christian anymore. I said the salvation prayer when I was 7 or 8, but honestly, what do you believe at that age? All you really know is what your parents tell you, with their own heavy bias. After watching my pastor vent political rants from the pulpit and make questionable decisions for years, I can't possibly be objective about faith or spirituality. I need time away, to go explore what else is out there, because Christianity is all I've ever known. So for now, I don't consider myself Christian at all. Who knows, maybe I'll come back one day. Maybe not, but I need a long, clean break from everything to find out who I really am without bias or fear. Too much hate seems to thrive in the name of Christianity now, overlapping with politics in all the worst ways, and thinking about it just makes me feel sick. I know good Christians exist, but I need space and broadening my world is the only way. My parents and I have been arguing a lot, especially now that I told them I won't be attending church anymore. Some background: I've been a member of our worship band for years, playing every Sunday, singing the hymns, feeling the so-called unity of our congregation. But beneath it all, there's always been this heavy pressure, a demand to conform, to show up every time, no matter what. If you missed a rehearsal, you weren't just letting yourself down, you risked being called out, shamed, or even punished by the church leadership. All of us in the band have felt it at some point, this weight of expectation disguised as Christian duty. It came to a head recently. Some members of the band started facing actual punishments simply for not attending services, punishments for simply needing a break, for choosing a moment of self-care over unwavering obedience. That, to me, is everything that's wrong with how they twist our faith into a weapon rather than a comfort. So I finally decided I needed space, a chance to step back and figure out what I truly believe, apart from the rules barked at us from the pulpit. The band put out a statement. In it, we said we wouldn't be attending the church anymore, not under these terms, not while attendance was enforced through guilt and fear. Officially, the band stepped back, but the truth was messier. Whether it was pressure from parents or just old habits, I saw some members still there the Sunday after August 4th. Maybe their families wouldn't let them stay away. Maybe walking out isn't as easy as announcing it in a statement. Before the walkout, the church tried to control every word we said. If anyone tried to speak up, there was always that risk: the microphone might be cut, our voices silenced by those who didn't want the truth heard. But this time, there was no stopping what needed to be said, no cutting off the message, because it was shared with Emma, and with everyone else, exactly as it was, meant to be heard. And online, at least, there's no mute button for honesty. Here's what we wanted them to know, what I wanted them to know: we believe in the core of our faith, but not in the fear and manipulation wielded by those in control. I won't let my voice or my spirit be drowned out anymore. Maybe I'll heal. Maybe others will see things differently. For now, I'm walking away, not just from a building, but from a system that forgot what faith is supposed to feel like. Update 3. Something's been gnawing at me lately that I just can't keep inside any longer. I haven't set foot in church for weeks now, and honestly, I hope I never do again. My parents aren't exactly thrilled about it. We've argued, discussed, tiptoed around the topic, But so far, they haven't made me go back. This latest mess was the final straw for me. Since everything went down, one of the senior bandmates, let's call him John, called me up to check in, and he filled me in on how things have unraveled since Emma's post and that band statement. John started community college now, but the other senior, the one whose parents threatened to pull his tuition if he quit, hasn't. That guy ended up punished for leaving the band, but John wasn't. He must have slipped through the cracks somehow. And then there's the girl who took over as lead singer after Emma. She's 15, just a kid. Her parents forced her back to church, same as another boy who'd been in the band. Meanwhile, Emma kept in touch after posting everything, and John updated me on her too. She pushed the two seniors to look for a new church home. The one who'd been punished? He flat out said he wasn't interested. Church was never his thing. He only went because his parents forced him all his life. Now, he's done with all of it. He said he'll never walk into a church again, because he never believed anyway. John, the one who called, he wrote most of that statement we put out. He told me everything that happened made him sick of the hypocrisy, and he's done with church too. Maybe he'll pray privately, he said, but he's finished with church as an institution. Emma's sad about the thing souring our outlooks, but she's not in a rush to find another congregation. She's taking time for herself. John asked if I'd look for a new church. I kept it vague, just said I was tired. But there's so much more. So here's what's really behind all this exhaustion. I've read so many comments about hope for future generations of Christianity, and it just filled me with anger. I can't pretend anymore. Frankly, I hate modern Christianity in this country. I get, it's not God's fault that so many Christians are hateful nowadays, but my issues go all the way back, way before this church incident. I never had a real childhood. I was homeschooled my whole life, not for some academic reason, but because my parents are terrified public school is too secular. I grew up isolated. I've got one real friend, and my social skills are garbage because the only people I'd see were from Sunday service or youth group, twice a week. My parents policed everything I wore, lectured me endlessly about purity, and wouldn't even let me play sports or do a single fun thing normal kids did. More than anything, I've grown up scared out of my mind with no one to talk to about it. My parents based my whole existence on a religion built on faith, on things there's no solid proof for. I tried voicing those fears in the past and only ever got, "You should know better," as if that was answer enough. I keep wondering, what happens when my time's up, if there's no God, no judgment day? What if everything I did to please something that doesn't exist was for nothing? Sometimes the terror of that eats me alive. Who would I even blame, if I was raised my whole life to believe in a fantasy, and then poof, nothing? By then, it'd be way too late anyway. That's not a way for anyone to live. It's already too late for me to have a real childhood. I just hope someone, somewhere, can help ease the fear a little until I can afford to see a professional. I'm trying to keep an open mind for advice, as lost as I feel, even though I got blasted by some for not going through with the walkout. Honestly, it stings to see people say we gave them hope for Christian youth. For me, Christianity is why I never had a childhood. I'm done with living in fear, done with devoting my existence to an invisible, maybe God. I'm 17. I've barely lived. I want to go to college, get a taste of freedom, actually experience life a little, go to parties, drink sometimes, date someone who isn't in the church. I want those last precious years before falling into the 9-to-5 grind, but it feels impossible with all the purity culture guilt and the shame that clings thanks to everything these extreme Christians drilled into me. People thought I was passionate about faith from my last few posts, but, God, that couldn't be further from the truth. I've hated Christianity for years, mostly because it robbed me of everything a normal kid is supposed to have. Sticking it to that church with Emma's idea in our post, throwing their own scripture back in their faces, that just felt good, like a tiny piece of payback. But passion? No. There's no passion here. Just anger at how controlling, suffocating, and joyless Christianity, and especially homeschooling, has made my life. Sometimes I hate how much of the Bible I know, how it's woven so tightly around everything in my head. Update 4. Over the past few weeks, I've found myself unraveling in ways I never expected. Much of it traces back to my old doubts about Christianity. Sure, the fear of the afterlife kept me anxious, but there's something even more suffocating about blindly following something just because it's the way you were raised. For as long as I can remember, my parents marched us to church every Sunday, weaving faith into every fiber of our home life. But recently, I hit my breaking point, one that had been building for years, echoing in something my parents always told me, but never truly resonated until now. They would repeatedly say, God comes first in our lives. Then came their love for each other, and after that, way down the list, came my brother and me. I haven't mentioned my brother before since he wasn't part of my church fallout. He's only 11 and stuck in their preteen program. But this time, he's part of what's weighing on me. My dad's a federal worker, a remote employee who's always had a lot to say at the dinner table about government changes. I never understood how my parents, so devout, so unwavering, could throw their support behind someone so unlike Christ, someone whose values seemed the complete opposite of what they claimed to cherish. That hypocrisy, though, is just a fraction of what's tearing me up inside. Things came to a head when Dad got the news. Despite years of remote work, Even before COVID, he was being ordered back to the office in another state. The government, the very one he'd pinned his faith and vote on, would no longer allow him to work remotely. Dad's now job hunting after reluctantly accepting the fork in the road resignation offer he was handed. He tells us he didn't think the office return mandate would include workers like him, who proved themselves at home for years, but apparently none of that matters. Now, he has until September, when his pay runs out, to figure out what to do next. I keep thinking, how does he not see the danger here? He's our sole breadwinner, and Mom has never worked a day outside the house. The irony burns. Years ago, when a family friend got laid off, we rushed to their aid with donations and support, treating job loss as an unthinkable disaster. But now, as our own family teeters on the edge, Dad shrugs it off, insisting it's all part of God's plan. He's even started floating the idea of us moving states, putting my brother at risk of losing his friends and being forced into a new school. And don't get me started on how my brother is allowed public school but I wasn't. I can't help but feel for those other remote federal workers caught in the crossfire, especially those who didn't vote for this mess. But with Dad, who voted for these changes just because he believed in a so-called Christian party, even as that party ripped apart his own job and stability. I simply don't get it. Worse yet, Dad goes right on supporting our pastor's praise for the president, nodding along every time the pulpit turns political. But if the sermon had praised the previous administration, I know without a doubt Dad would have stormed out, fuming. The double standard couldn't be clearer. Jesus warned about false prophets, about hypocrisy, but nobody in my family seems to hear it. I've reached a point where I know I'll never get through to him. I've said my piece and I'm done wasting precious energy. In his eyes, some invisible, unproven deity and a political agenda come before his own family, even when it means uprooting us and risking everything. Maybe things might change in the future. I can't predict where my faith will end up, but as of now, I'm not a Christian. I refuse to put a God with no evidence before the real, flesh and blood people I love, or the ones I'll meet as I step into my own life after graduation. Dad's lost my respect, and I don't see that changing. He chose his party and his beliefs over the very people who depend on him. It's clearer than ever, these past few years have exposed the real believers, the ones willing to hate in the name of Jesus, and those who, like me, can no longer stomach a faith twisted into something so ugly. I'm actually grateful to the 45th and 47th presidents for making it so obvious. This whole saga has finally shown me the truth about who's using Christianity as a mask for hate, and who, like me, have walked away from churches that swapped Christ for something far emptier. Update 5. I was honestly hesitating about sharing another update. Looking back, I realize I poured out so much in my previous posts, and the last one strayed pretty far from what I first wanted to talk about. But someone close to me told me I shouldn't be blaming myself for the chaos my family has spiraled into this year, because let's be real, this year has been anything except normal. Sometimes I felt like I was losing my grip, surrounded by my family's lack of logic. After my last update, my dad decided to call a family meeting. He wanted to lay out that things at home were about to change. Those biweekly payments he was getting after leaving the federal workforce, his buyout package, finally, dried up in September. He still hasn't found a new job. Now, we have to cut way back, no more eating out. Some regular things we used to buy are getting axed, and Christmas is going to be much smaller. My mom doesn't work, and my younger brother is losing his time at club sports after this semester. Not the ones tied to school, but the sports he plays with friends at local clubs outside of school. Every corner of life is getting trimmed down, but honestly, my frustrations with my dad started long before he sat us down. He always says he only applied for 2 jobs since he left work. First, because he wanted to be picky, and second, he says he needed time to refocus on his faith and get more involved with the church. He'd had about 6 months of steady biweekly paychecks from Elon's package, a safety net wide enough for him to blanket away any real urgency. He says he regrets taking the offer now, since all his teammates are still employed, but adds that it must be part of God's plan. He still supports the administration that made the cuts that caused all this and says us cutting back will teach our family to be grateful. It drives me up the wall just thinking about his lack of urgency or logical priorities. Back to the thread that started all of this, my own turning point. I'm no longer a Christian, and now I'm 18, living at home while I go to community college. Those 2 seniors who were in the band with me, they left for college and decided they're done with church for good. The new singer who took over for Emma is 15, and she's still leading the band, now with a new crew. Emma, meanwhile, is the only one of us still practicing Christianity, though she's still on a break from church, especially in this political climate. Emma's Instagram has almost turned into her pulpit. She keeps sharing her views on Christianity, and she just posted a detailed follow-up about how she got banned from church. She shared even more specifics than before, talking about what happened in August 2024, right after the band released their joint statement. And the other reason I wanted to update? Emma just posted a new video that really struck me. The video was about her getting banned. She tied it to the recent death of Charlie Kirk. In Emma's words, too many Christians these days are obsessed with celebrity Christians who talk the talk, but in her words, don't display Christian fruit. She cited Matthew 7:16-20. She pointed at all the hateful rhetoric Kirk put out, saying it was nothing like what Jesus would ever say, especially directed at people Jesus literally told us to love. She pointed out that when she was banned from our church, it was just the same as people who lost jobs or got suspended for criticizing Kirk after his passing. Only with her, it happened a year earlier, in summer 2024, because she spoke out against Christian nationalism, a movement she says is filled with the same venom. She's convinced Christianity has been hijacked by Christian nationalism because too many people blindly follow anyone who claims to be speaking for God, and insists nothing will change unless that does. I keep hoping my dad finds work, for my little brother's sake, and honestly, I hope Emma, and everyone else who split from the band, can truly move on. Update 6. I wasn't planning on writing again, but the last week and a half went off like a bomb and I don't even know where to put all of it. What started as eye rolls and whispered ignore the drama turned into receipts, actual, undeniable proof, and then a whole lot of fallout that got way too close to home. Our church did their big fall kickoff Sunday, the one where the pastor usually soft launches whatever theme he wants everyone to rally around. He did his usual wolves in sheep's clothing online thing, coded enough to feel like he could deny it if pressed, pointed enough that everyone knew who he meant. That night, something surreal happened. A draft email from an elder got sent to the wrong person and then kept getting forwarded. I don't know if it was a typo in the address or someone's autofill, but a teen who helps run Pro Presenter and Planning Center ended up with it and sent it to Emma. The email was a clarification to parents of youth worship participants about expectations, but the language made my stomach drop. It said stage privileges were contingent on alignment with our political convictions, and straight up spelled out that Christian nationalism is not a slur but a biblical mandate to disciple nations. They even referenced last summer's disruption as the reason they were tightening things up. No hiding behind vague language anymore. Emma posted screenshots, names and a couple identifiers blurred, but it was enough. 2 days later, an independent Christian news site ran a piece that could only be us, even though they didn't name anyone. Then a local reporter DM'd Emma asking for comment because the screenshots had started making the rounds in town Facebook groups. The church replied with a statement about mischaracterizations by disgruntled former volunteers. By the next morning, Emma got a cease and desist letter from some lawyer the church probably keeps on retainer, accusing her of defamation and intentional interference with church operations. She was shaking when she told me, but one of her coworkers connected her with a pro bono attorney, real, licensed, on letterhead, who wrote back citing anti-SLAPP and invited them to point to a single false claim. The lawyer's reply was the first time this whole thing felt like someone was finally standing up to the bully and not blinking. On Sunday, the pastor preached about persecution like he was Mall of America Jesus wearing a badge and a sash, and I watched families nod along while my phone buzzed with people sending me that attorney's email like a lifeline. While that was swirling, the new 15-year-old lead singer blew up at home. I didn't hear about it until after, which I'm oddly grateful for because I would have done something reckless and made it worse. She'd been holding it together for weeks, pretending like this was all fine, and then her parents found the screenshots on her phone. They told her she needed to be an example and that loyalty was part of obedience, and it escalated until she grabbed a backpack and ran. She went to Emma's apartment. Emma texted me a photo of the kid curled up on her couch clutching a hoodie like it was body armor, and for the first time since all of this started, I cried until I couldn't breathe. The next morning, the girl's mom and an elder showed up pounding on Emma's door. Someone called non-emergency, a patrol car came, everything got very quiet and polite. The officer asked the girl if she felt safe going home and she said, in this tiny voice that didn't fit her, not today. He gave Emma a list of resources and told the parents to take a breath. It wasn't some dramatic movie rescue, no one got hauled off in cuffs. But there was a sliver of acknowledgement that this wasn't normal. She went back the day after. She cut off socials. She's still singing. I don't know whether she chose that or it was chosen for her, and that uncertainty is a whole second ache I don't know what to do with. In the middle of that, my dad forwarded me an elder's email telling families to refrain from engaging former attendees online because responding gives oxygen to slander. He added his own line, "This is why we don't associate with Emma." Something inside me finally snapped all the way. I called the aunt who had offered months ago to let me crash if things got bad. She said yes before I finished asking. I packed in 30 minutes while my hands trembled so hard I dropped a stack of books down the stairs. Dad stood in the doorway quoting obedience passages at me like he was reading a grocery list. Mom kept saying, "This isn't what we taught you," like I'd gotten my independence out of a vending machine. When Dad blocked the front door and announced that nothing leaves the house until we have a family plan, I called the non-emergency number myself and asked for a civil standby. A very normal, very calm officer stood on our porch while I took my clothes, my laptop, and 2 bins of childhood stuff I'm not ready to lose. I signed my own name on the lease addendum at my aunt's townhouse that night. There's a key with my own keychain on it in my pocket as I write this, and I still don't know if I'm more relieved or more nauseous. The same week, the pastor from that other church, the one who'd reached out months ago, hosted an evening called Faith and Power and asked Emma to share what happened. I sat in the back under a fake ficus and stared at the exit for most of it. He read from the Beatitudes and then put the mic down and just let people talk. There were no flags. No insinuations about who God votes for. No mention of our church at all, only a general warning about turning pulpits into podiums. Emma told the story like she always does, steady voice, no venom, no triumph. A woman in the second row started to cry when Emma said the phrase free will. I didn't convert. Nothing miraculous fell out of the ceiling. But I didn't feel trapped in my own skin for an hour, and that felt like a miracle I could actually name. Dad finally got a job offer, far away, lower pay, a start date that would have us moving mid-semester. He came over to my aunt's and delivered it like a verdict. You're part of this family or you're not. I told him I'm 18 and I'm staying. He said I was abandoning my brother. I asked him if he remembered telling me for years that God came before me, before my brother, before mom. He didn't answer. He told me to return my house key. I told him I already had one of my own. He left without hugging me. My brother texted later a picture of his dog-eared baseball card stack and a PLS "Don't forget me." I don't know how to write about that without either screaming or shutting down, so I'll just say I'm saving every spare dollar for a bus ticket to go see him as soon as I can. As for the church, the blast radius is widening. 2 elders have stepped down to prioritize family, which is our community's way of saying either they got tired of bleeding out for someone else's crusade or their wives told them they were done. The youth pastor announced a sabbatical that smells a lot like a quiet exit. The 15-year-old was suddenly taking a few weeks off to focus on school, which, if you've ever been part of church speak, you already know is a nice bow on a mess. The last 2 Sundays, the sanctuary ran worship with a can track and a fog machine like a wedding venue that forgot to hire a band. A guy I've only ever seen running the light board led Reckless Love, and the song never sounded more on the nose. I got a part-time job at the campus library shelving returns and showing people how to clear paper jams without swearing at the copier. I set up my own bank account with my own name attached to it. I don't sleep much yet. I keep jolting awake at 3 a.m. sure I'm going to hear my dad pounding on the door, but when morning light hits the walls of my aunt's spare room, I don't feel like I'm choking. Emma sent me a photo of the cease and desist letter thumbtacked under a magnet on her fridge with a caption that said, "We don't get to pick the giants, only the stones." I'm not David and I'm not trying to be. I'm just trying to be a girl with a key in her pocket and a future that belongs to her. I don't know where this all lands. Maybe the church digs in and builds a taller fence. Maybe more people slip quietly out the side door. Maybe my dad takes the job and decides the distance proves his point. For once, I'm not trying to fix it or argue it into sense. I have a stack of textbooks, a shift schedule, a locked door, and a tiny, stubborn belief I didn't have before, that I can survive without shrinking myself to fit someone else's altar.